Yeah, so it's recording now.
Because
So
now it asks you
Orson,
to confirm if you want to stay on or not.
Yeah, I just got it.
yeah, well, I'm recording here.
Right.
Yeah.
So Orson is going to talk about the F word. I believe that's what it is. Frailty. Okay, the new F word. So without any further ado, let me pass the mic to him. Okay, so Orson, it is all yours.
All right. Can you guys see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about frailty today. And the thing about somebody has the TV or something in the background. I can hear something. All right, good. Okay, so we're gonna talk a little bit about frailty today. So just in terms of objective, I want you guys to be able to apply lifestyle measures to help mitigate frailty. So I want us to help delay frailty in ourselves, all right? So tonight's presentation is dedicated to Mr. Roger DePizer and Dr. Denison Bowler, who I don't know if he's on yet, but Roger, before we get started, I think you have attended, what, is it every one of these presentations? Is that right?
Yes, I have actually.
Yeah, that to me, that's an amazing feat. So we appreciate you and we appreciate your dedication. And so we'll talk we'll get a little bit more into that at the end. Okay, so frailty. So what are the key points? Frailty is considered in the geriatric world to be a geriatric syndrome. And in the scientific literature, people are talking about it being like a phenotype here, you know. So what does frailty actually look like? So we'll talk about the definition. If from a science-based standpoint, if you have greater than 3 or more of the 5 phenotypic components, technically from like a research standpoint, that would be the definition of frailty. And we'll get into that a little bit more. So stressors, whether they be medical or environmental, are less tolerated by people who happen to be frail. We're going to spend some time talking about preventive measures. What can we do? You know, sometimes when you talk about topics related to geriatrics, older people, it can be a little bit depressing because people say, well, it's inevitable. What am I going to do? So this is something that we definitely can do something about, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but it has to do with maintaining muscle mass and strength, and the importance of resistance exercise and being involved in some type of comprehensive exercise program. And then we'll touch a little bit on the fact that in order to build muscle or maintain muscle, protein supplementation is very beneficial in people who do not have a balanced diet or who are malnourished. So, so frailty as a concept, frail elders are just obviously just one subset of the older population. So individuals who are exposed to extremes of both heat or cold, who've been hospitalized or had surgery. If we see a 70-year-old who have had major abdominal surgery. Let's say they had surgery for colon cancer. Many of those people, even if they were not frail before surgery, if they had a complicated surgical course, what typically happens is that they become weak. There are some people who say for every day that you stay in surgery when you're a frail elder, you may take a week to recover. So if that person is hospitalized for 7 days, it might take them 7 weeks of rehab to get back to their pre-hospitalization state. All right, so obviously infections, injuries, somebody who is sick enough to be hospitalized for pneumonia may also need to come to a rehab center or nursing home, at least for temporary rehab, to help regain their strength. Other things, pretty self-explanatory. Someone who's had a prolonged illness, individuals who have repeatedly fallen. For older, if you have people in your family, grandparents, or folks that you know, even your friends who have always fallen, there's a good likelihood that they are probably frail, or at least they should be. It's something that they should talk to their personal physicians about. Disability, dependency, and obviously frailty can obviously lead to death. So there's a spectrum of severity with frail. And in people who do not have frailty, obviously those people are gonna be very independent. So when we talk about activities of daily living, that's things that, think of activities of daily living as things that any kindergartner can do. You know, they could grab themselves a quick meal. You know, they could use the bathroom. They don't need you to help them with their bathroom activities anymore. They can pick up the phone and answer the phone, and they can call their grandparents. So, so if you're able to do that as an older person, you know, you're able to perform your we call ADLs, your activities of daily living. So you're functionally independent. As you get sicker, that same individual 5 years down the road has gotten ill, say developed a heart failure, and they become frail, and you can find that they still are able to do some of those things, but they're not able to say prepare their meals anymore. They need help with that, you know, that type of thing. So they're frail. They still have some level of independence, but as they progress, as their illness progresses, as they become sicker, they can become very frail. And at the ultimate end, they can become completely functional dependent. So those are the folks who have to go to elder care facilities, nursing homes, etc. Or if their family has a lot of money, or if they have a large extended family, families have to look after them. In some societies, in a lot of Asian cultures, nursing homes are frowned upon. So extended families usually take care of these folks in some cultures, and in the United States, many of those people end up in nursing homes. They're very frail. Are you guys following me so far? I take that to mean yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, when we talk about frailty, we can break it down into primary and secondary frailty. Secondary frailty is the frailty that someone gets when they become acutely ill. A lot of the research has focused on heart disease. People have recognized there's now a lot of literature talking about the people who become frail with heart disease. So if you develop congestive heart failure, you have high risk for developing frailty, especially if it's not well controlled. Obviously, it goes without saying that if you develop cancer, HIV, COPD, meaning people with emphysema, chronic bronchitis, who are on oxygen in order to breathe adequately, then those people obviously it's no surprise when folks like that become frail. And by the way, in advanced cases of COPD, people also start losing weight. And that's usually a marker for someone who's had severe COPD. And once they start losing weight, then oftentimes these people end up on hospice care. Primary care, primary frailty, on the other hand, is just an intrinsic aging process. You know, we all have seen older people that we know, maybe in our family or who we grew up with, who they weren't necessarily sick. They just became old and old and old, and they just couldn't do the things that they used to be able to do. So that was just an intrinsic aging process. It wasn't related to a specific illness, it just was related to aging, you know. So frailty then is a chronic progressive condition, and with a whole spectrum of severity. So
Hey,
if
Orson,
yes.
let me interrupt you and give your voice a little rest there, man.
Okay, go ahead. Go
All
right.
So I have a mom who's 94.
Yes.
About 10 years ago, she got this chikungunya thing, and then afterwards had a mild stroke. And so in talking with her about, and she has now fully recovered, right? So in talking with her about what she missed the most, she missed being able to bathe herself. She missed being able to hold a spoon and feed herself, or to hold a hairbrush and brush her hair, or a toothbrush and brush her teeth. And by doing the therapy things that she needed to do and regaining these skills, she is just so grateful every day for the opportunity to be able to use those hands and fingers to brush her teeth and, you know, do those kinds of day-to-day activities. So I was just saying that we who could brush our own teeth don't realize how important that is. That's all I was saying.
Right, absolutely. That's really important. So that goes back to this slide, Denison. So your mom was functionally dependent, and she was able to regain a lot of independence as she got better. So did she get better just on her own? Did she get some physical therapy? You want to speak to that? How did she regain some of her independence?
Okay, so she is a very determined person, and she decided that she would walk again, right? Because she couldn't walk, and her kids got her a walker and gave her the physical therapy at home. And so right now, her right knee is still not working that well, but she moves around using the left leg and, you know, drags the right one around with the use of a walker. She is still doing therapy every day because she goes into the swimming pool and she's doing the water exercises to try and regain strength in that leg. But I would say at home therapy. Yes, she was fortunate to have a child who is a doctor who paid special attention to her at
Right.
home, and other kids who provided the in-home care.
Right. So she is fortunate to be able to have had that type of care and therapy, because had she not, the story unfortunately would have been a little bit different. So I'm happy that she was able to get that. So you might see, if you have an interest in this topic, if you look things up, you'll see a lot in the literature written about a phenotype. So basically, what does frailty look like? Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about sarcopenia. So sarcopenia is decreased muscle mass with loss of strength. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Slow motor performance. So when we see older folks who we're concerned about physically, one of the things that we could look at and we can measure objectively is their walking speed. And we'll talk about some of the things. So a lot of geriatricians could sort of just look at someone and see how they're walking and tell whether they're probably frail or not, especially if they have some of these other things. Again, you have to have 3 or more of these 5 things to technically be considered frail. All right. Decreased physical activity. If somebody is usually or you enjoyed being physically active, they get sick, they had a stroke, and now you can't get them to move, and they can't walk really fast, and they are becoming thinner, then, by definition, they're frail. All right. So a lot of times though, if you don't remember any of this, you know what they say when we were growing up, just use your common sense. All right. So you can often just look at people and observe them, and you can pretty much tell accurately whether they're frail or not. And certainly people who are malnourished, nutrition is an important part of this, and people who have poor exercise tolerance. I was talking to someone just today whose son had COVID, and this is a relatively, I read it in the Cincinnati Enquirer today. This guy is a pretty young guy in good physical condition, developed COVID. And this is a guy who had a personal trainer, works out every day, and just bringing in the groceries, he would be completely exhausted. Now, he wasn't frail, he just had COVID, but it's just an example of some of the things that you could see in somebody who's actually frail. So the criteria for frailty, to be more specific, we talked about it being a syndrome, and you have to have at least 3 of these characteristics, but let's get more specific. If someone has lost more than 10 pounds unintentionally over the last year, that's obviously a problem. Exhaustion, we just talked about. Unusualness, and we're not talking about somebody who walked a couple miles and they're a little tired. Physical exhaustion, just walking across the room, that's a problematic. If they're taking a whole lot of time to walk, say 15 feet, that's a problem. Someone who, not out of laziness, but just out of sheer I can't do it, has low physical activity, that's obviously a problem. And then weakness. How do we measure weakness? Well, the physical medicine and rehab doctors, some geriatricians do this. We really don't have one in our office, but there's a dynamometer, I think they call it, that the physical medicine and rehab doctors use. And basically, it's an instrument that looks like this. And what they do, they can measure your grip strength. Each hand, they'll do 3 measurements to see how far you can go, how strong you are essentially. And then they take an average of each. And it's age related, so there's no one measurement. It has to do with your age and stuff. And this is not something that people would memorize. You would actually look at the chart to see where someone is. So let's say we would expect that somebody would be 40 or 50, could squeeze 40 pounds and they only squeeze in 20. Then, on average, that would be a problem. Radford, you had a question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Personal question.
Sure.
I suffer from rheumatoid arthritis.
Okay.
And one of the things that happened to me is that I cannot make a grip. This is as far as I can go. Hope everybody can see that?
Right.
So how would you measure my grip strength
So yeah,
in
for
this particular
someone,
case?
yeah, for someone who has
Okay.
rheumatoid, yeah,
I'll make a
that
physical
wouldn't
mark.
work. Yeah, so we would rely, well, so if we can't measure your grip strength, we would concentrate on these other 4 measures: your activity level, your time to walk, and we'll talk a little bit about that in greater detail in a little bit. If you're getting exhausted, I heard you saying that you were working in the garden for hours, so it doesn't sound like exhaustion is a problem for you. So it doesn't sound that you're frail, Radford. But what about weight?
And I'm a very fast walker.
Yeah, you're a very fast walker, so it doesn't sound like you were frail. I don't think you have to worry. But yeah, if obviously, even people with not just rheumatoid arthritis, but osteoarthritis, if you have severe osteoarthritis of your hands, we're not going to be able to measure your grip strength. So the cutoff depends on your gender and your BMI. So your weight, your age, your gender, all plays a role. So this is not something that we would memorize. I can't tell you what a normal level is. We would have to look it up on a chart. All right. I'm gonna stop here and entertain any questions before we move on. So I want this to be an interactive session. Any questions? Any other questions or concerns so far? All right. All right, so I'm gonna see if I can get this to go. There's something called the timed get up and go test. Okay, this is put out by the CDC, but there are tons of different organizations if you YouTube it. And the thing I don't like about the time get up and go test is that everybody uses different measures. Some people use 12 feet, some people use 10 feet, 15 feet. But the point is, let's see if we can get this to go.
Orson, we're not hearing.
You also have to share audio.
Yeah, so you got to share the audio, I believe, that is coming off of your computer.
All right, hold on. Let me see if I can figure this out.
Yeah, DP,
So-
why don't you provide some instructions there for him?
Okay, so you see that, I don't know if you're seeing it, but you should be seeing a green and red thing bar on your screen that you're sharing.
Yes.
Okay, I think on the red thing, you might see a down arrow. If you click on that, there's an option that says share your computer sound.
Or on new share.
No. On your
It says
screen,
you are screen sharing.
Right.
okay, Austin screen.
Yeah.
Or is that me?
All right, hold on. That's
Yeah. So if you're seeing that, click on the down arrow next to view options, I think.
You see an option that says share audio as well.
I see mute, stop video, new
Okay.
share, pause share, remote control, and more.
Click on more.
Okay, share.
Go
Can you hear?
tests functional mobility. To perform the test, you need a chair and a stopwatch, or a wristwatch with a second hand. Have your patient start by sitting on the chair, feet flat on the floor, one foot slightly in front of the other, and hands on the armrests of the chair. Put a line on the floor 10 feet or 3 meters away. Ask your patient to stand up from the chair and walk at her normal pace to the line on the floor when you say go. When she reaches the line, she should turn around, walk back to the chair, and sit down. Be sure to start timing on the signal go, and even if your patient has not started to move, and stop timing at the moment she sits back down in the chair. While she's walking, stand between the chair and the line in case the patient loses her balance and you need to assist. Observe and note the patient's posture, width of the base of support, step height, stride length, arm swing, and path. When the test is complete, record the time. Also record whether the patient used an assistive device, and if so, what type. A community-dwelling older adult who takes more than 12 seconds to complete the tug is at increased risk of falling.
Orson, request?
The timed up
Yeah.
and go or tug.
Go ahead, Dennis.
Okay,
I'm trying to get out of this so I can go to the next slide.
okay, don't get out right away.
Okay,
Yeah,
go ahead.
my request pertains to this. When you played it, there was a URL that could take the boys to see many other things, yes,
Yes,
on that YouTube. If you could just copy that URL at some point in time and email it to us, or copy it tonight and drop it in the chat, everybody could get access to that and they could put it in their favorites on their search bar so that they could go and look at other videos on these kinds of issues.
yes. Okay,
All right, thank you.
no problem, no problem. All right. Why am I not getting to the next slide?
Okay, so you have to get out of here, back to your slide presentation, and you're not there right now. So try a right click on your slide and just end the show and go past that slide now.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do.
Or what you could do is
It's
just
it's not letting me do it.
stop share altogether,
Yeah.
and then reshare your presentation.
Thank you, Dos. Thanks,
Okay.
thanks very much.
All right.
Yeah.
Welcome, William.
Come on.
And so guys, at the end, I want to talk a little bit about using.
Good to go.
Okay, so in summary then, frailty is a clinical syndrome. It can be chronic and progressive, can lead to obviously progression of frailty. We talked about that. Can also lead to improvement, and we'll talk a little bit more about improvement, right? So the earlier, it's like with anything else, the earlier you're able to identify frailty, the more amenable it's going to be to intervene and to have some positive impact. So when I was growing up in Trinidad and I heard the word frail, I immediately thought of older folks. And that's partially true. I mean, there are more frail older people, but there are some people in their middle age, and even people who are young with chronic illness who will also meet the definition of frailty. All right, so the risk does increase with age, but there are many older people like Roger, your brother Radford. He's he might be a little bit older than us, but he's obviously not frail. He's still pretty robust. So you shouldn't associate frailty automatically with age. You can become frail at a younger age too. So let's talk about this guy. Do you guys know Blake Griffin, right? For those of you guys who are not sports guys, Blake Griffin used to play for the Los Angeles Clippers for a long time. Really good basketball player, as evidenced here. In 2011, I believe, he entered the slam dunk NBA contest and was able to jump over a car and dunk. Okay. Do you know how old Blake Griffin is now? How old is Blake Griffin? Would you guess? So this was
35,
about 10 years ago.
35.
He's only 32 years old.
Okay.
Blake Griffin can't do this anymore. Blake Griffin, when he went to he plays for the Brooklyn Nets now. When he went to the Brooklyn Nets, he got a standing ovation when he was able to just dunk the ball, because there were many people who were saying he's not even able to dunk anymore. So what do you think happened to Blake Griffin? Why is a 32-year-old professional basketball player having trouble, who did this once upon a time, jumped over a car and dunked? Why do you think he's having trouble dunking the ball?
Knees.
Andrew?
Knees, somebody said knees.
You know, wear and tear on the knees. And
Wear and tear on the knees, okay.
Muscle problems.
Muscle problems, yeah. So yeah, so it's all of the above. So I remember I used to love NBA. I used to watch a lot of NBA basketball when I first came to the US. And a lot of the announcers would always say, oh, he can't do it anymore. You know, the knees are, the legs are always the first thing to go. So why do you think they would say that? The legs are always the first thing to go. What does that mean?
I mean,
And-
you need the powerful legs to elevate, to get up to dunk. So
Right.
If the legs, if you can't dunk, it's because your legs are not powerful enough anymore.
Right. So you're right. Exactly. So
So Orson, let me
Yeah.
add a little different dimension for us on
sure,
that.
sure.
The biggest muscles in the body are the quads and the hamstrings. And if you're going to be losing some of your muscle mass, that's likely to be one of the first places that it will go from if you're a couch potato.
Yes. But Blake Griffin is not a couch potato.
So he must be losing muscle from all over. I wonder if he could still have sex.
And it took a turn.
That's not a detour that I saw coming.
Yeah.
But yeah. But yeah, so the answer is sarcopenia. So it's not just, yes, so it's loss of lean body mass, but it's also loss of strength. So a lot of athletes, if you look at Blake Griffin now, he still probably has muscular legs, even though he's had some injuries. So that plays a role. There's no question about that. Right? So the injuries play a role, but the strength in his legs that he used to. Usain Bolt, he can't run a world record again, even though how old is Usain Bolt? He's in his 30s, but he can't do it anymore. So so we lose muscle mass as we age. So I guess the point is this: if elite athletes lose strength, imagine what the rest of us who are not elite athletes, maybe some of you guys are, but I'm not. So imagine these elite athletes, they're working out like every day, right? And they are still, so imagine a 32-year-old NBA player. He's exercising every day. He has the best trainers in the world, and he's still losing muscle strength. So why does that happen? Well, it happens because as we age, as men age, tends to be a decrease in testosterone level. And if you're not, for people, not athletes so much, but for the ordinary person who doesn't get enough protein in their diet, that can also play a role. And for folks who are not exercising, decreased physical activity, you need feet to the pavement. All right. So when we talk about muscle strength and exercise, we want weight-bearing exercise in order to help prevent osteoporosis from developing as we get older. You have to have feet to the pavement. So your feet have to touch the ground when you're exercising to help to get good bone and muscle strength. All right. Does that make sense? All right.
Yeah.
All right. So Denison, this may look like a complicated slide, but it's complicated for a reason, right? It just explains in great detail about what happens as we with our aging muscles. But I just want to concentrate. So I wanted to show this slide just to show you how complicated the process is. But I want you, Denison, if you can read the top, how muscles age, just the line that begins with sarcopenia, those two sentences. Do you want to read that for us?
Orson, before, because it's a bit small. If you can
Yeah.
hold down the, if you can hold down the.
Can you read it? I can read it. I can see it pretty good, but I can read it if you guys can't read it well.
Yeah.
Denison, I can't hear you, Denison. Can you read it or
okay,
no?
Yeah. I thought that you were going to listen to DPISA and bump up the font size. I could read it.
All right, hold on.
But,
let me see.
Yeah, but your audience mightn't be able to now. So
well, just read it. That's why I said read it, so that everybody can hear. Those who can't read it can listen to you.
Okay, sarcopenia, the loss of muscle mass with age, can start as early as one's 30s and affects a large proportion of the elderly. Fortunately, exercise can combat muscle aging, likely by reversing many of the age-related physiological changes at the root of this decline.
Right. So that's the deal. So as we age, we are gonna lose muscle mass, but it's not like there's nothing that can be done. So even elite athletes like Blake Griffin could lose muscle mass, and if they don't lose muscle mass, they can lose muscle strength. And that's why for the vast majority of professional athletes, their peak years are going to be in their 20s. All right. So the reason why people marvel at LeBron James is because his peak years have lasted longer than most exercise doctors would have guessed. And so everybody says, we have no idea how LeBron does it, but he should have been declining a lot more rapidly than he has based on the physiology of aging. So there are always going to be exceptions to the rule, but for the vast majority of the peak years are going to be in their 20s. Once they start hitting their 30s, they might still be good, but they're not going to be as good as they were in their late 20s or mid 20s. Does that make sense? All right. So secondary frailty. So we talked about this earlier. Diseases that can predict the development of the frailty phenotype. So to reiterate what we already talked about, heart failure is definitely a one that folks notice a lot of, because folks with uncontrolled heart failure frail, and COPD, I've seen it. A lot of folks with bad COPD life, once they start losing weight, that's a sign that, hey, let's have a talk with the patient, because the end is probably coming within the next year or so. And we're not talking 1 or 2 pounds. Obviously, it's a no-brainer, common sense, right? Cancer, any advanced type of cancer could be problematic as it relates to getting frail. Other diseases, kidney disease, what we call metabolic syndrome, which is like diabetes, high triglyceride level, et cetera, and any chronic infection. So, and I would add prolonged hospitalization for any reason. Someone who's been in the hospital for 2, 3, 4 weeks because they had a stroke or et cetera, et cetera. Those people are going to develop inevitably secondary frailty. So if you use the adage that for every day in the hospital, it might take a week to get back to your pre-hospitalization state. Think about it. If you spend 2 weeks in the hospital, it might take 2 months before you can get back to where you were. And that is if you are exercising. So what can we do about it? So resistance activity. So in my hand here, I have an exercise band. So anything that allows you to do resistance activity. This is the strongest. I got this from the physical therapy department at the nursing home. This one is they come in different strengths, and you can start off at a lower strength. You can go to Dick's Sporting Goods and get these. Any sporting place would have them. Any exercise store would have them. And I don't think they're that expensive. Any physical therapy department would have them. And usually it gives some bands to you as part of your physical therapy if you ever need physical therapy. So resistance activity, strengthening activity. You can also use light weights. Now, when some people get a little put off when we say weight training, but weight training doesn't have to, we're not talking about lifting 50 pounds, 40 pounds. All right. You can do strengthening exercise with 5-pound weights. Okay. So it doesn't have to be heavy lifting. And again, you can go to Walmart and buy, I have some weights in the basement here. You can buy 2-pound weights, 5-pound weights, 10-pound weights, 20-pound weights. So if you recall from our previous conversations, when we talked about exercise, remember I said, Dave, is Dave on here, right?
Yeah.
Dave, you remember how many minutes of, this is the 4th time I'm talking about this, so I expect you guys to memorize it. How many minutes of cardio per week?
150 minutes for the week.
All right, 150 minutes per week. And remember what we said, on two days, it could be 2 of the same days or the 2 extra days. If you do 30 minutes 5 days a week, you should be doing some type of resistance activity, okay? And you can YouTube it, you can Google a lot of things that you can do just with these exercise bands that I have right here. So that's the key management approach, resistance training. As far as it relates to sarcopenia, frailty induced by sarcopenia, all right? So you want to supplement with walking. Again, walking is good exercise. Brisk walking is very good exercise. You don't have to take up jogging. Brisk walking is good exercise. And remember what I just said, weight bearing activity. So you want the feet to hit the ground. All right. So you guys, especially if you live in a winter climate like we do here, you want to take advantage of the summer and the spring and the fall. Because a lot of times when it's 0 degrees outside, I don't like being outside in that type of weather, but you want to take advantage of walking and, a 30-minute walk. Now, protein calorie supplementation. This is big for people who are sarcopenic. Remember what sarcopenia is, right? You're losing muscle mass. Muscle, protein go together, right? So you want to make sure you're getting enough protein in your diet. If you have a grandparent or a loved one who is obviously frail and in rehab, those people might need extra protein in their diet. So that's where things like Ensure supplements could come in, and any other type of, protein supplement. Pick your favorite brand, Boost, Ensure, et cetera, et cetera. You can even use Carnation instant breakfast. Carnation Instant Breakfast has a pretty good protein in it, and it's pretty cheap. So without protein, it's gonna be almost impossible to regain the strength. You really need protein. Avoiding excessive use of medications. There are a lot. When we look at some of the medication lists that we see in the nursing home situation, there are a lot of unnecessary medicines that don't add anything. So you wanna avoid that, because the problem is many of those medicines have anticholinergic side effects, what doctors call anticholinergic side effects, and it could make you dizzy, can lead to falls. So you want to get rid, especially of the medicines that are not necessary, that could give you that can increase your risk of falling. And then if there are medical causes of the weight loss or fatigue, obviously you want to get that treated. So there are different types. When you look at things on the internet, there are tons of different things put out by the CDC. I looked up stuff in by the Canadian health organizations. I mean, there are a whole host of stuff for you guys, and so I just put this up to kind of show you the different type of exercise wheel. If you take a look over here, you can even use a towel. Say, twist the towel, 12 repetitions, 3 sets. You can lift a bottle. You don't have, I guess the point is, you don't have to be rich to do resistance exercises. All right. Just getting up from a chair, 12 repetitions and 3 steps can help with strength. Just climbing up and down stairs. When we are assessing someone for surgery, is this person's too frail to undergo major surgery? One of the questions we ask is, are you able to go up and down a flight of stairs without significant difficulty? And if somebody says yes to that, that means they can see, which is kind of like metabolic equivalence or something like that. All right. So this is so you don't have to necessarily have an exercise trainer, a personal exercise trainer. This is stuff, everybody has a towel, everybody have bottles or cans, everybody has a chair, everyone has steps. And for if people are frail, you definitely want them to hold on to the handrail, by the way. All right, because you do not want them to fall. All right, so even on this one to the left, you could even squeeze in a ball. 12 repetitions, 3 steps can help with grip strength, hand strength. And then walking, we already kind of talked about. All right. And notice here it says walk with your feet in line, 12 paces, 3 sets. So there are a whole host of really cheap things that we can all do to help decrease muscle weakness. So the interventions, as we already talked about, this sort of reiterates what has already been mentioned, obviously. Exercise, nutrition, and obviously reducing stress helps with everything, all right? Once people get old, there's gonna come a time during advanced Alzheimer's dementia, as an example, where some people are gonna be frail because they can't follow instructions. So you may tell them, hey, let's do these exercises, but during advanced dementia, people don't understand what you're saying. So there comes a time where there's nothing that we could do. People with advanced cancer, for example, sometimes they're too weak to do anything. So you don't want to, this is the end stage of vein over here. That's where you're going to get the greatest bang for your buck. Once people become super frail, then it becomes intervention is going to be more difficult. So I just put this up to show my Canadian friends. There's something called the Canadian Frailty Network. So if you have an interest in this topic, you certainly can look that up. It's part of a frailty assessment within the Canadian healthcare system. All right, so you guys, I'll let you guys look that up yourselves. All right, so one of the things that's pretty important is throughout North America, throughout the Caribbean and South America, the population is aging. So because the population is aging, all right, there's gonna be, in the next 20 years, there's gonna be an explosion of frail people. So if you think you're seeing a lot of frail people now, in 10 to 20 years, you're gonna see tons more frail people. This particular article talks about the dynamics and consequences of population and aging in Trinidad and Tobago. So people are recognizing that even in Trinidad, it's going to be an issue. So here is what is happening, and Roger may have an interest in this throughout. In the Caribbean, by the year 2050, people are going to be living 19 years older than they typically do. And by the year, which is obviously just 4 years away, 2025, 11 years more than they typically do right now. As you look across the world, that trend is crazy. I mean, if you look at Italy, for example, in 2050, people are going to be living, if this from the United Nations graphic is accurate, 35 years older now. So that, I mean, that's like pretty significant. So there are going to be a lot more children being born, and there are going to be a lot more frail people in Latin America and the Caribbean. So the frailty thing isn't going to go away. You guys are going to be hearing a lot more about this over the next 10 years. And you could be experts on talking to folks about frailty. So this is just another graphic, just kind of looking at the proportion of people. And you can see here in 1960, the proportion of people who lived to their 60s and older, and compare that to what it's going to be in 100 years later. So it's going to be an explosion of middle-aged and older people living much longer. And this is statistics from Canada. So looking at the demography in Canada, it's kind of the same thing. So all over the world, people are going to be living older, living longer, and living longer means more chronic disease and more frailty. All right, so so that's the end of my frailty talk. I did want to share a couple other slides with you guys that have nothing to do with frailty. But before I move on to these other slides, which are only like 2 or 3 slides, I'm gonna entertain discussion and questions, and then I'll show you those other slides later.
Orson?
Yes, sir.
You know, when you were talking about Blake Griffin and stuff,
Yes.
and you talk about muscle mass and muscle strength deteriorating with age, right?
Right.
For fellas our age, at 60 years old, right?
Yes.
Are we capable of increasing our muscle mass and muscle strength?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we are. We definitely are. But remember, with every year, and certainly with every decade, we're continuing to lose muscle, right? So in order to, we're still gonna lose some, but you wanna lose it at a lower rate. And the way to lose it at a lower rate is to make sure you incorporate. There are a lot of people who exercise, but they only do cardio. So the point is, cardio is important, and we all should be doing cardio. And I run into this too. I tend to, because of time, I start work at 8 o'clock, and it's like I may have half hour, so I'm like, I'll do the elliptical for half hour. And then God, I should be lifting. I should be doing some resistance activity, but I gotta go to work, so, but we should all be trying to slow the process down. So if we are all fortunate to live a long and fruitful life, we will continue to lose muscle mass, but we want to at least slow the process down. Okay, so the way to slow the process down is to do resistance training. And any good comprehensive exercise program, like if you go to the YMCA and you join an exercise group, if the trainer is any good, they will incorporate resistance training activity into that exercise program. There are some people, it's like I can't exercise by myself. I need to be with other folks, and that's fine. But if you're gonna do that, just make sure you join the right type of program. Okay, you want to definitely. So you can check out. You can see if the program is good, because if they incorporate in both aerobic training and weight training or resistance training, then it's probably a good program.
I also have I've had bone scans, and so one of the things that came up was some evidence of, I think it's osteoporosis, right?
Osteopenia or osteoporosis?
I think porosis. I'm not
Okay.
sure. But then my doctor had prescribed taking vitamin D supplements.
Right.
And doing and he said, similar to you, walks. So it has to be resistance. It has to be weight. That type, your own body weight. In other words, right, with the walks and that sort of stuff. So I think those two things will go hand in hand with the preventing the muscle mass loss and all that sort of stuff, right?
Right. Yes. Absolutely. So if you have osteoporosis or osteopenia, which osteopenia predates osteoporosis, you want calcium, you want vitamin D, you want weight bearing exercise, and a little protein. All right. So you want that. And if you try that and that fails, then there are medicines out there. The medicines are a little controversial for some people because they can have side effects. But there are medicines out there that can be used. So if you have osteoporosis, you should get another bone scan at some point to see if your interventions are working.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I'm going to make a statement to the boys, and then you could comment on it.
Sure.
Sure. Yeah. So I observed my father in the last 10 years of his life, and one of the things that I noticed when he got to be about 80, he got a lot of pain from his calves cramping up. And so what I'm saying to the guys out there is, even if you're healthy, we owe it to ourselves as a group to take care of these muscles. Otherwise, we'll get pain that we're not thinking about right now. Even if we don't get frail and falling over, you also don't want to have a lot of pain as a result of not taking care of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I see Michael has his hand up, and he will go, and then I have a question.
Sure.
You guys are generally about 6 or 8 years younger than me. I'll be 70 this year. I think one of the most important things is that in spite of how busy you might be, what time you go to work in the morning or whatever, you must make some time to exercise. I think that has helped me right through, right? Around 40, I was very sick. In fact, I nearly died, right? I ended up in New York, Columbia Presbyterian and all that. And it was very difficult to diagnose because I was exercising and the symptoms were not showing easily. But up to now, I exercise every morning, right? Even if I get up 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, I started my stretches upstairs. Then I go downstairs and make tea. And while the water is boiling, I'm stretching. And while the tea is brewing in the cup, I'm stretching out on the front porch. And you know, I pass it all through the morning and all my push-ups and everything. So I think once you do that, you know, I have a mix of exercises that I got from my days of yoga and karate. And I do that still. So once you keep at it, right? My massage person told me the other day that my left leg muscles are weaker than the right. So what I do now, I do the exercise with the left, then the right, then the left again, in order to catch up, right? But once you keep doing it every day and make it up, you know, you don't have to put aside an hour, a whole hour together. You know, stretch it during your entire morning process, you know, while you're dressing and all that, and get it done. And I think everybody will benefit from that.
Yeah, and that's really good. That's really good point. The point that you made about it doesn't have to be cumulative. When we talk about 30 minutes of exercise, let's say cardio, let's say, okay, you're committed to doing 30 minutes of cardio 5 days a week. It's okay if you want to break that up. If you say, okay, I'll do 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the afternoon, that's perfectly acceptable. That still counts. You don't necessarily have to do the 30 minutes all together. I mean, for us, if you're short on time, for me, it's more convenient just to do the 30 minutes all together. But the other thing is push-ups are good. I have a bad neck, so push-ups bother my neck. But when I was younger, I used to do a lot of push-ups. Now I wish I could still do push-ups. But if you're able to do push-ups, push-ups are good for upper body strength. It's just that you need lower body strength too. So if you're gonna do push-ups, then you gotta find a way to do something for the legs. All right, but push-ups are really good for upper body strength if you're still able to do it. If you have really bad arthritis or osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, that type of thing, it's going to be kind of difficult to do that. So you'll have to find other ways to get your exercise. So you have to tailor your exercise regimen to your medical conditions if you have any, and et cetera, et cetera. Roger, you had a question.
Yeah. So I was looking at, you know, the, I guess, causalities of frailty, and you have here HIV/AIDS. And I was wondering if that pertains to people who are on treatment, or if it's an uncontrolled, because clearly if you don't control what, you know, the HIV thing, it's gonna kill you, right?
Right.
You know, so I'm wondering.
Yeah. So for HIV/AIDS, it's for people who, it's not for Magic Johnson. Okay. Magic Johnson has had the best treatment from when he was first diagnosed to now. All right. So we're not talking about him. And his viral load count is almost non-existent, the last that I heard. So for him, his HIV/AIDS, at least as of now, has not really impacted his health at all. And probably, as long as his viral load stays low, it probably never will. All right, but that's not who we're talking about. We're talking about, yeah, Roger, the people who are uncontrolled or who have had advanced HIV/AIDS that, you know, treatment got to them too late, or they're so immunosuppressed that they're not able to mount an active response to their medication, or they just never had the right medicines, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, that's who we're talking about.
The other question I had too, and Khalid and I were talking about this, was that, you know, the things that you do in your youth eventually catches up to you in your senior years, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of us, you know, we play football, we in karate, and I remember, you know, punching the wall, you know, seriously punching the wall and so on. You know, now I have issues with my my fingers, you know. I remember kicking down a shed actually. You know, I hit the column and the whole shed collapsed. Now I have problems with my knees, you know, right?
Right. Yeah.
Somebody said it's
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
karma, I guess. Dave.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
it's-
And so arthritis, if you have severe arthritis of your hands, then you know there are exercises on the internet for people with arthritis of their hands. You know, so the beauty of the internet is that it could be used for good or bad, right? But some of the good things is like a lot of stuff like that you can just look up. You can look up exercises for people with rheumatoid arthritis, exercises for people with osteoarthritis, all of that stuff, you can YouTube it. And hopefully you'll have YouTube kind of failed me tonight, so sorry about that, guys. But next time I'll be better prepared. Hey, Dave, you have a question?
Yeah, first of all, thanks very much for all the information. And Mr. Redder, thank you very much for sharing the personal your story, right? I just want to swing it a little bit differently because Dennison alluded to the situation with his mom and dad. And some of us, this is very helpful. What you just presented there is going to be helpful for us. But I just wanted to comment and maybe get your views for some of the other people. We are currently dealing with, well, I dealt with my grandmother, and now I'm dealing with my current case, my mother-in-law. And I wish they had been exposed to some of this information to understand that, A, this thing that they're going through is not a taboo. Because you mentioned something about I think you alluded to the Asian culture too, but more importantly, what I wanted to say, even right now, and Dennison, you know my mother-in-law, who is considered to be very literate, she will throw away that walker. She will toss it away. And she's saying, I don't need that, because there was that whole thinking that your old people using a walker or a walking stick, you know, they don't want that. And it's just, we were trying to explain to her, it's just a matter of the balance, because she does have a rheumatoid arthritis on one of the side of her body. So the doctor was explaining that because of that favoring of the body, that's etc., it will cause an imbalance. And we're careful now, we're concerned about the fall. So this is very helpful for us. And I'm sure some of us are in the same stage where we have to deal with older people than ourselves, you know?
Right, right. So that's a really important point, Dave. Across all cultures, it's called, I think simplistically, it's called pride. We see some folks who's had 2-3 strokes and they're refusing to use a walker. And it's like, you fell 10 times in the last 2 months and you're telling me you're going to refuse to use a walker? So it's just like some people, it's pride and denial. It's a denial because people don't want to acknowledge that they are vulnerable as it relates to their health. So it becomes a pride and a denial thing, and they're denying something that we can all see, that they are weak, they are fallen, they can benefit from what we call an assistive device, a cane, a walker, some of them a wheelchair, and they still they're resisting it. I've had people who fell, broke hips, and it's, why didn't you, they got up at night to use the bathroom. The walker is right next to their bed. They refuse to use the walker. They go to the bathroom, they fall, they break their hip. And it's like, had they just used the walker, they wouldn't have had a broken hip. And for many people, once they break their hips, especially if they're frail, that's often their demise can be predicted within months or years, you know, so.
Yeah, and Orson, I could confirm, if somebody is in their 80s or their 90s and they fall, and that hip is likely to be broken during those
Yes,
years,
yes,
they
So-
be dead.
yeah, yeah.
So
Well,
I
it's-
like to
it's
ask.
in-
I like to ask William and George if they have anything to
Can I
contribute.
just comment on one thing before you do
Sure,
that?
certainly.
Just time.
Mhm.
It's simple. I was just smiling there when you mentioned the fact about the wheelchair. The same individual I'm talking about, when she would travel, we would never try to, you know, much time we try to convince her on the plane to take the wheelchair. And finally, you know, when she started to take the wheelchair, when she realized she can get a check-in first and get a check-out and beat the line, and she had to worry and go through when they had the TSA thing, finally, that was the only time she got to go through it and get priority check-in or whatever. But anyhow, that's all I wanted to share. That. Go ahead, DP. Yeah.
Yeah, William, and then George, and then the owner. If you guys have anything to say or contribute. William, you're on mute. You're still on mute.
So nothing on Frailty itself. It's just that recently in Vancouver, someone that we know, friend of ours, he was arrested. Well, I shouldn't say, he was detained and handcuffed, and he's at least 82 years old, like that. And the description of the person they were looking for was a 40-year-old black man, bald. So he said,
Wow.
how it mix me up with a guy? Yes, I'm black, but do you think I'm 40 years old? So he's kind of proud of that.
Yeah.
He does exercise regularly.
Yeah.
He walks the seawall all the time. So he was out on his walk, and these 5 police officers confronted him, put him in handcuffs, until, of course, they realized that he was a BC Supreme Court judge.
Yeah. I had read about
Black guy,
that.
yes.
Yeah, a
Retired
Supreme Court
judge.
actually.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
So, you know,
Yeah.
so he was saying, you know, there's expressions like things like black don't crack. And is there any truth to that? Or is that just,
No, that's no, not really. Not really.
William, for you to stay strong, you need resistance training and maybe some weights. So you are on the right track.
Yeah, George.
No, not really. Interesting and very informative conversation as usual. Thanks, Orson.
Yeah.
I could relate to, you know, the pride factor. When my mom was sick, you know, for many years before she passed away, about 4 years ago, she, you know, I must have taken down while visiting a half dozen different type of canes or walking sticks, and from the regular canes to the type with the 3 legs to balance, because she, you know, she had the issues with diabetes and heart problems, and, you know, getting frail as we think of it. But she would conveniently forget that stick, the walker, whenever she was going anywhere. And eventually, you know, she fell down several times. Luckily, never broke a hip, but she'd fall down like one step stepping down. Never really felt to break a hip, but, you know, it was just a matter of time. But you know, it's just something that the people are, you know, they think that pride is, they can't come to terms with using a walker. You know, we have to, we ourselves, as we get older, have to come to terms with that and overcome that stigma, right? Because it is not a stigma; it's an aid that we use.
Right.
I remember 10 years ago when I had my heart surgery. I used a walker for about 2 weeks, right? Because my cardiologist recommended I go for walks, and the first couple of weeks I felt, you know, I felt a little bit unbalanced, and I bought myself a cane and walked. And a few people in the neighborhood, you know, asked me what was wrong, and I explained, and I didn't feel any stigma. to me, it was just an aid to help me get better. And I think that's how we have to view it.
Yeah. And that's what that's really good, because that's what we should be telling folks. And it's not just doctors telling their patients, it's you guys telling your family members, your friends, hey, this doesn't mean that the end of the world, you know, because you have to use a cane to help in your rehab process. That's not something you should be ashamed of. But it's some of that is cultural. And as you guys know, culture trumps everything.
Yep.
So yeah.
Hey, Orson,
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
just move your mouse to the bottom of your screen and stop sharing so that we
Oh yeah. Well, wait, before I want to show you a few more slides before I stop share.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, then,
I don't know if
let Jacan go
before-
first, and then you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah, Peter.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Well, once again, I want to thank Orson. I'm always impressed by the amount of work you put into these presentations. And I
Thank
think
you, Peter.
we're all the better off for it. It's really wonderful to have somebody like you in the group that's willing to put in this kind of effort on so many occasions, you know.
Thank you, brother.
Secondly, I totally disagree with you with the black don't crack thing.
Like you have a black boyfriend, Peter.
All right.
Everybody can see. You look at a 40-year-old black woman, 40-year-old
European.
Yeah. I mean, come on.
I wasn't thinking about 40 years old. I was thinking more people in their 70s and stuff. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. You know,
All
I
and I wasn't thinking about wrinkles either.
I was just thinking about the black don't crack refers to really the ability to look.
To look younger than you are.
Yeah, the
Yeah, I think that's true, but I was thinking more in a frailty context.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, more in a frailty context. And I see Radford is laughing.
I get that all the time. Boy,
yeah.
Oh, you're looking so young. What you
I had an uncle who was 90 years old from Tabakit, so he ate natural stuff all the time. You know, he had his chickens and stuff. And he was my uncle on my father's side, and he used to come from Tabakit and spend weekends or a week or two with us. And at 90 years old, he used to drive over at Crossing and walk all the way to my house in Golconda at 90 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. I had an uncle who used to do that too. Yeah. And actually, ironically, he died crossing the San Fernando bypass.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
But
I got an uncle like that, but he never used to go past the rum shop. When he reached there, he stopped.
Just a quick observation before Govin, if I pass the mic to Govin. I know he just came back, so I was just thinking the whole business about assisted living mixed in with the whole question of aging and frailty. Okay. A lot of times, and I don't know if this is a Trinidad thing or if it is a global thing, but a lot of younger members of the family, unless they have a perspective, a broader perspective, okay, oftentimes get very frustrated with the elders as they get frailer, thinking that these people are a bother, you know, not recognizing that, okay, it is all of us have to go through this natural process of aging and becoming frailer. So there is a lot of, what should I say, psychology that is mixed up with this whole business about assisting the elders. Okay, A guy told me one time, and I kind of took on this perspective, and I was dealing with my wife's mom, that it is really a blessing, to assist the elder in getting through this process of getting free. You see, because the perspective is, when we were young children, they were the ones who stepped up and brought us to where we are. So really, it's only a blessing to give that back to them when they need it. I don't know if you guys feel that way or had that experience, but it's really truly a blessing to take care of
Yeah.
the
The thing is,
elders.
I think that's a truism for almost all cultures except the European culture.
I beg to disagree. I think it's a human thing,
What do you, Peter? What do you have against the Europeans, boy?
No, this is the thing. A lot of times I talk and people think I have something against them.
No. I was kidding.
I just look at the characteristics and recognize the reality we live in is based on their mindset. So it's not really, you can't criticize a group of people for how they are naturally, but the hard part is recognizing it, recognizing that our whole socialization process, the whole way we look at the world, the things we consider successful or not successful or beautiful or not, all these things are based on socialization from an European perspective. So this is what I always try to bring across. So I don't want to give people the impression that some anti-white, freaking, I don't know what, but that's not my intent.
Yeah, no.
The important thing is that you
I was
enjoy
just
the
kidding.
football match this afternoon.
Yeah. I think Dennison had a question.
Orson, why don't you go ahead and finish the slides? Because this.
Yeah, let me just finish my slide. So
before you finish, because I
yeah,
need
go ahead.
to something else. I wanted Govind, if he had anything to contribute.
Okay, thanks very much. Well, when I look at this slide, three things come to my mind. One is opportunity, economic opportunity, because maybe that yellow part of the slide, that top part, is showing that you have a big economy to explore and exploit, because typically in society, nobody caters for the elderly. No, you have no bus stores, nothing. It's only the casinos take care of the elderly. The other thing is that Europe, the Europeans are not picking on my friend here, but the Europeans are shifting their elderlies to Indonesia and Philippines, where you have better caregivers, because it's cheaper to build a retirement home in the Philippines and those places than to bring somebody from Philippines, the caregivers, into Europe to see about the elderly. The other thing is that in Italy, I think the oldest people you're gonna find was in Italy. Well, probably before COVID, I'm not sure now. But what they were finding was that what distinct them from the rest, they were linking it to China, consumption of China. So apparently China is a health food.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Well, they were looking at all the foods and all that people were eating.
Oh, okay.
And what they found was that the only difference they saw was that all these people were over 100, and China was high up in the diet. I don't know if it's high fiber or if there's something nutritious with it.
Yeah, I know the chickpeas is probably part of the Mediterranean diet too, right?
Yeah.
And the Mediterranean diet has been proven to have the greatest health benefits. So that probably makes sense. That probably makes sense.
The other point with the elderly is dementia. When I was in Suriname, a nurse told me that people who are coming to Indonesia, I think, or Philippines, to find out why is it you had low amount of cases of dementia. and they were looking at whether coconut oil had any benefits of reducing or lowering the amount of cases of dementia.
Yeah, I haven't heard that because, coconut oil is high in saturated fat. So, so I know it can raise your cholesterol. You guys know that, right? Coconut water might be good, but the oil might not be as good for you. So, yeah, but yeah.
Awesome.
Go ahead, Dave.
But coconut oil do have cholesterol?
It does.
No, man, is a plant product.
Yeah, but it has.
Cholesterol is only from animal products.
Well, it's high in saturated fat.
Yeah, but not the cholesterol.
Maybe not cholesterol, but saturated fat. It's high in saturated fat.
All right. Okay. No problem.
All right. Yeah.
Dave, you had a comment you wanted to
I just wanted to comment briefly on the point about the blessing. And again, this is a personal experience. Yes, I agree with you. It is a blessing to be able to give back or to take care of the elderly. But personally, now we're at a phase of our life where we maybe could do that. But I have had to deal with situations, and I'm sure some of us would have done this, had this, where it bordered on the point of guilt, when you cannot be able to give back because of the stage of the life that you were at that time. For example, building our career, migrated up here to America, and you had an elderly parent or grandparent or somebody, and you wish you could have done it, but you had to make the choice. So I fully agree with that, but at some point in time, we also must be empathetic and we have the compassion, but the circumstances is we just couldn't do it at the time. So I just wanted to point that out, and no, it's a blessing, but sometimes it's something you have to deal with, and it could lead to a guilt feeling if you don't really sit down and examine it. I mean, I know how I ended up dealing with it, but that could be a story for our next time. But just to make a blanket statement and to know his blessings, we know that, but sometimes in the phase of our life, when we make that decision to migrate, we had to deal with
everybody has their own personal story, situation, and you try to deal with it as best as you can.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Now I'll make my comment then. So, if you take care of the elderly and they are your parents, for example, you get to see 20 or 30 years before your time come, a lot of the challenges that they are having that you will also have. Because their body structure, their DNA, their lifestyle is a lot like what yours would have been, right? So there is benefit to you without you knowing by taking care of a parent or parents. When I had to spend time with my dad in his last 4 or 5 years, what I noticed is that I had 4 siblings, so it was 5 of us. 3 of them were very willing to provide money, right? But they were not taking time out of their lives because of where they were. They felt, hey, we will pay people to take care, right? We will pay for a night nurse. We will pay for a domestic to come and, cook and clean and those kind of things. At the end of the day, we are all in agreement that we will do the best we can for our parents. But to Deepisa's point, part of the blessing that you don't even realize is when you do it, you get a foreshadowing of what your end time could look like, right? And you might also say, what I'm doing for my parents, I don't want my children to have to do for me. Right? So, you will have life lessons.
Yeah.
If no reaction, Orson, here is my comment that I was going to make about 20 minutes ago. It was this.
Okay.
Right? I don't see myself as wanting to live if I'm frail. So let's say that I am 80 or 82 or 83 and I can't walk, I can't take care of myself and so on. I don't want to be a burden on anybody. Right?
Yeah.
And so if we think that we're going to live beyond 80, which is very likely for those of us who are 60s now and in good health, right?
I don't smoke.
And and by that time, there'll be new advances in modern medicine of the day. So many of the people on this call will live to beyond 100 easily, right? You will only be able to have quality of life if you start taking care of yourself now. Brain, body, everything. So if you wait too long, it's not smart, right?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. No question. All right, so so from a cultural standpoint, you know, and we grew up in a culture where if you talked a lot about yourself, so I'm getting off for frailty now, okay? If you talk a lot about yourself, you were quote unquote showing off, right? But I feel like we shouldn't be afraid to talk about our kids. So I'm gonna take just a couple of more minutes to share a couple slides that has to do with my daughter who just graduated. So do you know who the person on the left of the screen is? Does that face look familiar at all?
Yamiche Alcindor.
Yamiche Alcindor.
Yes,
So
yes.
Yamiche is one of the top Black journalists in the entire
Oh yeah.
My
United
nose
States.
correspondent.
And that's my
PBS
daughter
News
on
Hour.
the, yes, she's a PBS NewsHour. She's on MSNBC. And she, if you Google Yamiche versus Trump or something like that,
Yeah, I remember
Trump
it now.
used to try to give her a really hard time. But so she's just like an excellent journalist. And I'm not embellishing this story in any way. I just felt like I wanted to show this slide today. And then ironically, so I put this talk together over the weekend. And then ironically today, because as you guys have heard, there's the Haitian president was assassinated today. So, and Yamiche is Haitian American. So, I found it pretty ironic that the day that I decided to show this slide, the Haitian president got assassinated. So this is my daughter in Washington, D.C. with Yamiche Alcindor. And I'm sorry?
What university did you go?
American University.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So this is graduation earlier this year with Sophie Jr., I should say, because my wife's name is Sophie also, in DC. So I just wanted to kind of share that.
Orson.
Yes, yes.
Where are you in this photograph? I'm only seeing young people.
That's me right there.
I know pretty person in that, man.
That's good. That's good. That's good. I'm glad you feel that.
Head taller than you, huh?
Yeah. He's definitely taller. He's taller than me. And he has black hair and a beard. So it's okay to be a little proud of your kids. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah. And so she did journalism, and part of the reason this talk is also dedicated to Roger and Dennison is we had talked about the Tulsa story. I mean, Roger talked about it, I talked about it. So she majored in journalism. She's doing a 3-month internship at the Dallas Morning News. And just ironically, again, the first article that she published was on the Tulsa massacre. So I just thought, hey, that's pretty interesting. So, and then she has a front page article on something environmental at the Dallas Morning News this past Sunday also. So I just thought that.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. All right. Thanks. All right. I'll stop sharing now.
And so
you know what you just did there, Orson?
Yes.
You just volunteer your daughter to come and talk on this thing, you know.
You know, she can. She'll be happy to. At some point, I'll ask her to do a talk.
Yeah, and so Orson, in my new job, a big thing that we're dealing with is introducing educational practices that makes learning more equitable, right? Across social strata, across gender, across color, you know, those kinds of things. So if she'd like to co-facilitate a presentation, I'm volunteering Peter Holder and Peter Khan and myself to coordinate with her and talk a little bit and, you know, put together a session.
You make learning more equitable? I don't quite get that.
Okay. Access to educational opportunity more equitable for people of all colors, creeds, and races.
All right. I get it now.
Yeah.
If I may, I saw the making of Sesame Street recently. Fantastic documentary, and it's along the same lines as what you were talking about.
Thanks, Dex.
Yeah, and is Peter Holder still on?
Yeah.
Yeah, quinoa is pretty healthy too. Yeah, no question.
Yeah, Orson, if you look at the photographs, Peter Holder is the white boy in the picture.
With black hair. Black hair.
I think Winston's gonna be there.
Yeah. 60-year-old hair.
Peter hit middle age yet. He's still aspiring towards middle age.
Is all that coconut oil in here?
You still don't think so?
One thing I always found fascinating is maybe about 15 years ago, I was playing soccer with some 20-year-old.
Soccer, right?
Yeah, football. And what struck me was my mind wasn't slow. So I saw the ball and I'm going to get it. And in my mind, I could reach it. And I'm running and this guy just passed me. And I realized that my mind is not aging. I think I can do things that, you know, and I realized my body is not the same. And it was a revelation to me, you know. So one of the things I always afraid of is my mind going to get old? Right? Does it get old?
I think that reminds me of something. If I could just interject, I was playing cricket up here a few years ago, and I was batting and I was running between the wickets, and as far as I was concerned, I was running fast. I was running flat out. But they were videotaping the game. And when I looked at the replay and I see how slow I was running, it was a shock. It was a shock. You know, so your mind tells you it's sending out the same signal, but your body responds much slower. So you might believe that you're running fast, but in actuality, you're not.
Yeah, that's true.
So
that's true.
Before we go to Dave, you know, R. Kelly has a song, you know, your mind is saying yes, but your body is saying no. I think that was the experience.
I thought R. Kelly's in jail, man.
Yeah.
You quoting some sex offender there, Roger? What's up with that?
I thought nobody would have observed.
So what do you guys think of this Bill Cosby thing?
No, let's Dave ask this question and then we will come to the Bill Cosby.
Oh, sorry. I thought, yeah, go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to comment when Peter talked about the video. It's the same feeling you just get when you go to wedding nowadays and you find some of them people who you meet up and who you know from Trinidad or wherever, how they're looking old. And then afterwards, you see some photographs of the pictures and you see you in the photograph. And you say, who is that old ass there too, boy? You know, because you don't think and you ain't watching yourself, right? Right, Peter? And when you look and you see these people line up, you see.
And you realize you fit right in.
Oh gosh.
All right, Orson, you were saying?
No, I was just switching topics to Bill Cosby.
Okay.
Not too technical for us, man.
Too sensitive a matter.
We leave that with that person.
You wanted to say something?
Yeah, talking about people who are in like Bill Cosby and so on. There was a guy who died today. He died at 96. And he brought back memories of my grandmother who took care of us. Because the one who was the what you call it? Midwife, etc. She used to go to cinemas every Wednesday night to look at Indian movies. He was one of her favorite actors, Dalip Kumar.
Yeah.
Some of you may remember that. I don't know if you know that, but yeah. I just thought I'd mention that. He died at the age of 96.
Oh, well, plenty movie, man. Yeah, the word Ramo Shaman thing.
You know who I was looking for the other day because I was kind of reminiscing and remember them two cinemas they had right around the library in the back there?
Yeah, I remember those.
Prince and Metro.
Yeah, they only used to show Indian movies.
Right, yes, I remember that.
I was from Golconda, so I used to end up going to them Indian movies.
That's what
there was one actor, man, who was just so beautiful.